The morning sun filtered through the tall windows of Adelaide Cottage as Catherine, Princess of Wales, sat quietly in her favorite reading chair. The past months had been the most challenging of her life, a journey through darkness that had tested every fiber of her being. The cancer diagnosis had arrived like an unexpected storm, turning her carefully ordered world upside down in ways she never could have imagined. She remembered the exact moment when the doctor's words had changed everything. William had been holding her hand, his grip tightening as the oncologist explained the treatment plan with clinical precision. The children were at school, blissfully unaware that their mother's life was about to take a dramatic turn. In that sterile hospital room, surrounded by medical charts and the soft hum of machinery, Catherine had felt something inside her shift. The woman who had always been the picture of royal composure suddenly found herself facing her own mortality. The weeks that followed were a blur of medical appointments, treatment sessions, and carefully managed public appearances. The palace had released a statement about her condition, but the reality was far more complex than any press release could convey. Catherine had always prided herself on her strength, her ability to maintain grace under pressure, but this was different. This was a battle that required a different kind of courage altogether. During the long hours of chemotherapy, she found herself thinking about her children more than ever before. George, Charlotte, and Louis had become her anchor, their innocent questions and endless energy providing a lifeline when the treatment left her exhausted and vulnerable. William had been her constant companion through it all, rearranging his entire schedule to be present for every appointment, every difficult day when getting out of bed felt like an insurmountable challenge. The palace staff had rallied around the family with unprecedented discretion and support. Maria, her longtime assistant, had quietly restructured Catherine's entire calendar, moving meetings to her home when possible and ensuring that the children's routines remained as normal as possible. The security team had worked overtime to maintain their privacy during this vulnerable time, understanding that the family needed space to heal without the constant scrutiny of the media. There were moments when Catherine wondered if she would ever feel like herself again. The woman who had once effortlessly managed royal engagements while raising 3 young children suddenly found herself struggling with the simplest tasks. Her hair began to thin, her energy levels plummeted, and there were days when she questioned whether she had the strength to continue fighting. But something remarkable happened during those dark months. As her physical strength waned, Catherine discovered reserves of emotional resilience she never knew existed. She began to see her life differently, focusing on what truly mattered rather than the endless obligations and expectations that had previously defined her days. The cancer had stripped away everything superficial, leaving only what was essential. Her relationship with William deepened in ways that surprised them both. They had always been partners, but now they became allies in the truest sense, united in their determination to protect their family and navigate this crisis together. He would sit with her during the worst days, reading aloud from books they both loved, or simply holding her hand in comfortable silence. The children, with their remarkable adaptability, had adjusted to their mother's illness with a maturity that both broke and healed Catherine's heart. They created artwork for her during treatment days, wrote little notes of encouragement, and seemed to understand instinctively when she needed extra hugs or quiet time. Their resilience taught her about the power of unconditional love and the importance of being present for the people who matter most. As autumn approached and her treatment neared its end, Catherine began to feel the first stirrings of hope. The doctors were cautiously optimistic, the test results were encouraging, and slowly, very slowly, she began to recognize herself again. But she knew that this experience had changed her forever. The woman who emerged from this battle would be different from the one who had entered it. She started keeping a journal during her recovery, writing down thoughts and reflections that she never would have had time for in her previous life. The pages filled with observations about family, duty, love, and the precious fragility of health. She wrote about the kindness of strangers who had sent letters of support, the dedication of her medical team, and the profound gratitude she felt for every ordinary moment with her children. The decision to share her journey publicly had not come easily. Catherine had always been intensely private about personal matters, preferring to maintain the royal tradition of keeping family struggles behind closed doors. But this experience had taught her about the power of vulnerability and the importance of connection during difficult times. She began to consider how her story might help others facing similar battles. As the leaves began to change color in the gardens of their Berkshire home, Catherine felt something she hadn't experienced in months: excitement about the future. The treatment was working, her strength was returning, and she was beginning to envision a life beyond cancer. But she also knew that this chapter of her life deserved to be acknowledged, celebrated, and shared with the people who had supported her family through the darkest period they had ever faced. The idea for the video began to take shape during one of their family walks through the countryside near their home. The children were running ahead, their laughter echoing across the fields, while William walked beside her, his presence as comforting as it had been throughout her entire ordeal. In that moment, surrounded by the people she loved most, and feeling the warmth of the sun on her face, Catherine realized that her healing journey was more than just a personal victory. It was a story of hope that deserved to be told. The idea of creating something deeply personal and meaningful had been growing in Catherine's mind for weeks. As her final treatment session approached, she found herself wanting to document this transformative period not just for herself, but for everyone who had supported her family during their most vulnerable time. The traditional royal approach would have been a formal statement or perhaps a carefully orchestrated photo opportunity, but this situation called for something entirely different. During a quiet evening conversation with William, she shared her vision for an intimate family video that would capture the essence of their healing journey. She wanted to show the world not just the polished, public-facing version of their lives, but the real moments that had sustained them through the darkness. William listened intently as she described her desire to create something authentic, something that would honor the gravity of what they had experienced while celebrating the hope that now filled their days. The planning process was unlike anything the palace communications team had ever undertaken. Catherine insisted on maintaining complete creative control, working with a small, trusted group of professionals who understood the delicate balance between transparency and privacy. She spent hours reviewing potential locations around their Berkshire home, looking for places that held special meaning for their family during the recovery period. The old oak tree where she had often sat during her treatment, finding solace in its steady presence through changing seasons, became an obvious choice. The kitchen where the children had prepared countless cups of tea and simple meals while she rested was another meaningful location. The garden path where she had taken her first tentative walks as her strength returned held particular significance in her recovery story. Catherine's approach to the video was methodical, yet deeply emotional. She wrote extensive notes about what she wanted to convey, focusing on themes of gratitude, resilience, and the profound love that had carried them through their darkest period. She was determined to avoid any sense of self-pity or dramatic revelation, instead choosing to emphasize the positive elements that had emerged from their struggle. The filming process stretched over several weeks, carefully scheduled around the children's school commitments and William's royal duties. Catherine insisted that every moment captured be genuine, refusing to stage interactions or create artificial scenarios. She wanted viewers to see their family as they truly were during this period: imperfect, vulnerable, but ultimately unbroken by the challenges they had faced. George, Charlotte, and Louis approached the project with the natural curiosity and enthusiasm that had been such a source of joy throughout Catherine's treatment. They understood that their mother wanted to share something important with people who cared about their family, and they participated with a maturity that consistently amazed the adults around them. Their spontaneous laughter, their gentle interactions with their parents, and their obvious comfort with one another created some of the most powerful moments in the entire video. One particularly meaningful sequence was filmed during a family picnic in the meadow behind their home. The children had insisted on preparing the meal themselves, creating simple sandwiches and packing a thermos of hot chocolate. As they spread the blanket on the grass, Catherine was struck by how these ordinary moments had become extraordinary during her illness. The simple act of eating outdoors with her family, something she had previously taken for granted, now felt like a precious gift. William's participation in the video revealed a side of him that the public rarely saw. Away from the formal constraints of royal protocol, he was simply a husband and father who had watched his beloved wife fight for her life and emerge stronger than ever. His quiet strength and unwavering support throughout Catherine's illness had been the foundation upon which their family's recovery had been built. The couple made the deliberate decision to include moments of reflection about the darker aspects of their journey without dwelling on the medical details. Catherine spoke candidly about the fear that had gripped her in the early days of her diagnosis, the uncertainty about whether she would be present to watch her children grow up, and the profound gratitude she felt for every additional day she had been given. She also addressed the broader implications of her experience, acknowledging the privilege of having access to world-class medical care while recognizing that many families face similar battles without the same resources. Her intention was to use her platform to raise awareness about cancer research and support services while maintaining the personal focus of her story. The technical aspects of the video were handled with extraordinary attention to detail. The cinematography emphasized natural lighting and intimate framing, creating an atmosphere of warmth and authenticity. The editing process was collaborative, with Catherine reviewing every cut to ensure that the final product accurately represented their experience without sensationalizing or minimizing the significance of what they had endured. As the project neared completion, Catherine found herself both nervous and excited about sharing such a personal glimpse into their lives. She had always maintained strict boundaries between her public and private personas, but this experience had taught her about the power of vulnerability and connection. She hoped that their story might provide comfort and inspiration to other families facing similar challenges. The decision about when and how to release the video required careful consideration. Catherine wanted to time the announcement to coincide with the completion of her treatment, marking a clear transition from the uncertainty of illness to the hope of recovery. The palace communications team worked closely with her medical team to ensure that the timing was appropriate from both a personal and medical perspective. The final video was a masterpiece of intimate storytelling that captured the essence of their family's journey through crisis and recovery. It showed Catherine not as a distant royal figure, but as a woman, wife, and mother who had faced her mortality and emerged with a deeper appreciation for life's simplest pleasures. The authenticity of every moment, from the children's uninhibited joy to William's protective tenderness, created a viewing experience that was both deeply personal and universally relatable. The morning of the video's release dawned crisp and clear, mirroring the sense of new beginnings that had been building in Catherine's heart for weeks. She stood in her dressing room at Adelaide Cottage, looking at herself in the mirror with eyes that had seen too much pain, but had emerged filled with an unshakable sense of hope. Today marked not just the end of her treatment journey, but the beginning of a new chapter in her life as a cancer survivor. The palace had coordinated the release with military precision, but Catherine insisted on maintaining the personal tone that had defined the entire project. Rather than the usual formal press release, she had written a heartfelt message to accompany the video, expressing her gratitude to the medical professionals who had saved her life and the countless people who had supported her family through their darkest hours. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Within hours of the video's release, messages of support began pouring in from around the world. Cancer survivors shared their own stories. Medical professionals expressed their admiration for her courage in speaking openly about her experience, and families touched by similar diagnoses found comfort in seeing that even a princess was not immune to the fears and uncertainties that accompany such a devastating diagnosis. Catherine spent the day reading through hundreds of messages, many of which brought tears to her eyes. A young mother from Wales wrote about watching the video with her children after her own cancer diagnosis, finding strength in Catherine's example of grace under pressure. An elderly man from Scotland described how the video had helped him understand his daughter's battle with the disease. A teenage girl facing her own treatment journey wrote that seeing Catherine's family together had given her hope for her own future. The medical team that had overseen Catherine's care watched the video with professional pride and personal emotion. Dr. Sarah Mitchell, her primary oncologist, later commented that Catherine's willingness to share her story would undoubtedly encourage other patients to seek timely treatment and maintain hope during their own recovery journeys. The nursing staff who had cared for her during the most difficult days felt honored to have played a role in her healing process. William found himself deeply moved by the public response to their family's openness. He had initially been hesitant about sharing such intimate details of their private struggle, but seeing the positive impact on other families facing similar challenges convinced him that they had made the right decision. The video had transformed their personal pain into a source of hope and connection for people around the world. The children returned from school that day to find their home buzzing with activity as the communications team managed the unprecedented response to the video. George, Charlotte, and Louis seemed to understand instinctively that something significant was happening, but their primary concern remained their mother's well-being. They gathered around Catherine that evening, pleased to see her smiling and energetic in a way that had become increasingly common as her treatment neared its end. In the weeks following the video's release, Catherine began to envision how her experience might inform her future charitable work. She had always been passionate about early childhood development and mental health advocacy, but her cancer journey had given her a new perspective on the importance of comprehensive health care and family support services. She began meeting with organizations that supported cancer patients and their families, learning about gaps in services and exploring ways to make a meaningful difference. The filming location at their Berkshire home became a place of pilgrimage for Catherine during her continued recovery. She would often walk the same paths that had been captured in the video, remembering the courage it had taken to share their story and feeling grateful for the positive impact it had generated. The old oak tree, where she had sought comfort during treatment, became a symbol of endurance and renewal, its steady presence a reminder of her own resilience. Catherine's relationship with her own mortality had been fundamentally altered by her experience. Where she had previously lived with the assumption of infinite time, she now approached each day with conscious gratitude and intentional presence. Her interactions with her children became more deliberate and meaningful, her conversations with William deeper and more honest, and her royal duties infused with a new sense of purpose and authenticity. The video also marked a turning point in the royal family's approach to sharing personal struggles. Catherine's courage in revealing her vulnerability had created space for more honest conversations about mental health, family challenges, and the human cost of public service. The traditional British stiff upper lip had been replaced, at least temporarily, with a more authentic and relatable approach to public communication. As autumn deepened into winter, Catherine found herself looking forward rather than backward for the first time in months. The final scans had shown no evidence of disease. Her energy levels had returned to normal, and she was beginning to plan her return to full royal duties. But she was determined to approach her public role differently. informed by the profound lessons learned during her treatment and recovery. The video had achieved something that traditional royal communications had rarely accomplished. It had created genuine emotional connection between the monarchy and the people they served. By showing her family's authentic struggle and triumph, Catherine had reminded the world that beneath the titles and tiaras, they were simply human beings dealing with the same fears and hopes that define the human experience. The intimate family moments captured in the video became treasured memories for Catherine and her family. The simple scenes of them walking together through the countryside, sharing quiet conversations, and finding joy in ordinary activities would forever represent their journey from despair to hope. The video stood as a testament to the healing power of love, the strength found in vulnerability, and the importance of sharing our stories to help others feel less alone in their own struggles. Years later, Catherine would look back on this period as the time when she truly found her voice as a royal, an advocate, and most importantly, as a human being who had faced her mortality and chosen to transform her pain into purpose. The video marked not just the end of her healing process, but the beginning of a more authentic and impactful phase of her life in service to others.